the screen immediately after he did so. "Hi Ash," came the sweet greeting and cheerily smiling face of Erica through the screen of the device. "Erica, hey." Ash greeted back, the announcement causing all three of his friends to gather around him and push their faces in next to his. "Erica," they all said together, said Bluenet giggling before waving in reply. "Hello everyone. How are you?" "We're doing just fine," Misty spoke up as she got closer to the screen. "How are things at the shop and gym?" "Oh, they're just fine," she responded with dismissive gesture. "The girls are fine, the Pokémon are fine. Business is booming and the repairs at the gym are steadily moving underway, slowly but surely." The flower-loving business magnate then sat forward in her chair with some degree of enthusiasm on her face. "Well, hey, I just wanted to call and ask a question of the four of you if I could. I know you're always on the move with your travels, but me and the girls wanted to go out for one last celebration with you if that would sound alright. I was thinking the Golden Magikarp perhaps." "Ah." Brock gasped in shock as he pressed his face in until it almost covered the whole screen. "Did you say the Golden Magikarp?" Erica looked a little taken aback at first but then giggled again and nodded. "Yes, I did. It would be my treat if the four of you would be interested." Ash and the two girls had to shove Brock's head out of the way, but as soon as they did, the young palette native gave a bright smile in reply. "Are you kidding, Erica? We'd love to hang out with you again before we go." Giselle and Misty nodded their fervent agreement, which had Erica clasping her hands together happily. "Wonderful. Then we'll get together tomorrow evening outside of the restaurant at 7 o'clock, does that sound permissible?" A quick glance with his friends had Ash readily agreeing. "Sure does, we'll see you then. Ciao for now then everyone." Erica spoke in pleasant farewell. Once the call had ended, Ash looked back at his friends. "So then tomorrow I'll get Ghastly sent over, explain the plan to him, then we'll drop by the game lounge before dinner if he manages to prepare in time. We won't do anything tomorrow, just scope out the area." Neither of the other three had any complaints, so Ash turned to look down at his first Pokémon sitting on the bed. "Well, Pi, we're gonna have to think of something to do with you during the infiltration operation. Can't have you on my shoulder, it's a dead giveaway." The small yellow Pokémon just tilted his head up at his trainer and gave a cute, Pika, in reply as his large brown eyes blinked innocently. Somehow, from the thoughtful look on Ash's face, Pikachu just knew he was not going to like what his friend was planning. The next day, shortly after completing his training with Misty, Giselle and their Pokémon down in the built-in gym of the Pokémon Center, Ash had just finished sending Oddish back to the lab and was waiting in front of the Poké transfer in the lobby for Ghastly to be sent over. A few seconds later, the Pokéball containing his special Ghost-type Pokémon appeared on the teleporter and he took it before walking back to the gym where his friends and Pokémon were still gathered. "I got him, guys," Ash announced. "Let's see how he's been." The Z-marked young trainer then called his Pokémon out, and as soon as Ghastly appeared, in typical fashion it was with a grand, overt entrance. "I'm Bach." The gaseous spirit yelled as, with a twirl, he appeared in the air with two conjured spotlights shining down upon him. "It's good to be back. Yes, ladies and gentlemen of Kanto, your favorite host Mr. G is back center stage again to bring to you all of the glorious splendors of Ghastly." Ash yelled. "Focus. We need to talk to you about something important." The comedic ghost type looked down at his trainer and allowed a small expression of frustration to cross his ghostly visage, which was followed by his, well, cheeks, puffing out in a pouting fashion. "How can you possibly expect?" The ancient Pokémon began in a sighing tone, his almost operatic speaking voice taking on a tinge of exasperation. "For my act to improve if I never have a willing audience?" Ash's eye twitched. "Audience? Seriously?" He gestured around the gym. "What audience? And what act for that matter?" Ghastly floated down until his somewhat perpetually creepily grinning face was within inches of Ash's own. "My dear Ash, everyone is an audience and everywhere is a stage." He floated higher again and made an exaggeratedly loud proclamation. "The world is my stage. If there were Cricketune in the gym at that moment, it would have been chirping. Brock, Misty, Giselle, Ash and even the other Pokémon were all looking at the spotlight-loving ghost type with thin eyes and sweat drops rolling down the backs of their heads. However, it was the trainer of said ghost type that broke the silence with a deadpan comment. If you really want an audience for what you call an act, why don't you just use the other Pokémon back at the lab? It was Ghastly's turn to sweat drop, however, as he coughed rapidly and then stuck his face into the air. Yes, well, it would seem that not all are blessed with the ability to recognize fine talent when they see it. And of course, I refuse to pander to the common crowd, you know. Ha 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 ha. As he gave an overly compensatory laugh, Ash sighed and dropped his face into his hand. Who needs to worry about a Pokémon that won't obey you when you've got a self-absorbed ham of one instead that can't stop telling bad jokes? Oh ho. Ghastly loudly verbalized. Well, if that's the level you're going to stoop to, then I don't think I'll help you with whatever it is you needed anyway. HMPH. Ash's eyes widened as he ran up and waved his hands in front of him. No, Ghastly. No way. I was just joking. Yeah, it was all a joke. You're a total riot, buddy. Funny as they come. The spectral Pokémon quirked an open at the boy's pleading and then slowly grinned once more before turning around and laughing. Now that's more like it. I knew you'd come around. You might just not be completely tasteless after all. Now, what can I do for a loyal fan? Glad for the more serious turn of topic, Ash nodded and straightened himself up. Ghastly, I need to ask you to please do something for us if you can. This is what it is and also why we need it. The young trainer then went into an explanation of what he and his friends were planning to do and exactly what Ghastly's role would be in it. After a few moments of telling the story and allowing the ghost type to mull over the request, the illusionary gifted Pokémon started to speak again in a noticeably more serious tone. That certainly is a request indeed. I can tell you right from the start that unless I am able to remain close, the illusion will fail. But you won't be able to just float around the game lounge watching us. Misty commented as she sat near the mirror wall of the gym. And if you accidentally became visible at any point, I guarantee someone would notice. Ash nodded. Yeah, that's a really good point. Ghastly, could you somehow maybe, I don't know, turn yourself into something that I could wear so you can stick with us throughout the operation? Ghastly thought for a few more moments before eventually replying. I could. But I would have to practice at it for a while before I could do anything of such a sort. In essence, I would have to split the focus of my power output between keeping the illusions in place for each of you, while also keeping myself transformed. I am sure I can achieve such a feat, but it may take a day or so of practice. Ash nodded. That's okay, we can wait. After all, we want to get this right the first time because there won't be a second chance if we fail. In fact, I tell you what, we have a dinner to get to this evening, so while we go do that, why don't you stay in mine and Brock's room here at the center and just practice while we're gone? He looked back at his other Pokémon for a moment before smiling. Hey, maybe Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle and Roselia could stay too and let you practice your illusions on them to help out. The four Pokémon in question went from resting on the wooden, spring-loaded floor after their hard bout of morning training to instead, jumping to attention. Almost immediately, nervous looks crossed over their faces at Ash's suggestion. An excited smile in place, he clenched a hand into a fist and called out to his other Pokémon. What do you think about that, guys? You wanna help Ghastly figure this out for us? The four-type varied Pokies looked over their trainer's shoulder at Ghastly, who appeared to have suddenly adopted a sinister aura around him as he grinned ominously and cackled darkly in their direction. Seeing this, all of them gulped nervously but didn't want to disappoint their trainer, so, being real troopers, looked back at Ash and nodded. The smiles on their faces the very definition of forced. Alright. You guys rock. He cheered. This is the kind of teamwork I love to see. Turning back to Ghastly, the happy youth nodded. You got everything you need, Ghastly, I appreciate this. Ooh, happy day. The eccentric hybrid Poké exclaimed in an equally as enthused tone. I do so love to experiment. This is going to be fun. The creepy chuckle and gleaming-eyed look he gave his fellow Pokémon would have been enough to chill anyone's blood. Of course, it couldn't possibly go that badly though, right? Well, it's not a tuxedo but, hopefully this passes. Ash observed as he stared into the mirror that he and Brock shared at the Pokémon Center later that evening. Currently, the young Pokémon trainer was dressed in a pair of jeans with a black button-up, long-sleeve shirt. A more formal outfit that he kept with him in his pack just in case of moments like the dinner he and his friends were soon to attend. From what I've read, the Golden Magikarp's dress code basically just calls for a clean, well-dressed appearance, Brock's voice replied as he came out of the bathroom wearing tan dress pants and a darker brown-colored dress shirt. Walking over to the door, Ash opened it up and stepped into the hallway while securing his X-transceiver to his wrist. Yeah, hopefully. He looked back as Brock shut and locked the door. Otherwise we might end up getting thrown out on our backsides. They then went up to the girl's door across the hall from theirs and knocked upon it. A few seconds later the lock was heard being undone before the door swung open and showed Misty standing in the doorway wearing a dark red, one-piece dress skirt that stopped just above her knees. Seeing her hair also having been let down out of its usual side ponytail and now hanging down to her upper back, Ash looked more than a little surprised at her appearance and made it known by commenting with a smile. Wow, Misty, you look beautiful. A very faint blush adorned her cheeks, but she smiled nonetheless and looked at the two of them. Thanks, the two of you look pretty nice too. Giselle then came to the door wearing a silver dress, very similar to Misty's, only her hair was now the opposite of the redhead's, being pulled up into a high bun atop her head. Dang, Giselle, you look gorgeous too. Ash complimented his girlfriend. I love the dress, both of them actually. You two are dressed to kill. I'd be the luckiest guy at the restaurant to show up with you two on my arm. As usual, it seemed as though Brock was blind to any beauty that didn't belong to a girl not of their group, or at least one that wasn't 10 years older than him, since he merely looked at his two female friends with a smile and nodded in agreement. Giselle and Misty both faintly blushed at the words belonging to the boy that both of them fancied, but the brunette was the one who spoke for the both of them. Well, we'll just have to see how good you are from now until we get there, won't we? He smiled in amusement but then stepped back as the two girls exited the room to follow them, Misty shutting and locking the door behind her. Afterwards, the four of them made their way down to the lobby and then to the gym where Ash's Pokémon were all gathered in order to be Ghastly's living-style mannequins for the illusions he was trying to craft. However, as soon as they entered the small gym, it was at the sight of absolute chaos they stumbled onto. Presently, Pikachu, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Charmander and Roselia were all morphed into some kind of strange, unnatural hybrid shape of Pokémon that partly resembled themselves, yet also that of others, and some that weren't even living objects. Pikachu looked like an electric mouse with chicken legs and a beak. Bulbasaur's bulb had been turned into a fire hydrant with boots for legs. Charmander was now a serpent with no legs and a flower growing out of his head. Squirtle's shell was a giant box and Roselia's flower hands had been turned into shears, ironically enough. All five of them looked to be in a state of complete embarrassment and frustration while Ghastly, meanwhile, merely appeared intensely pensive and thoughtful as he examined each of them. Of course, comedy couldn't go to waste as he was wearing glasses over his eyes, a card gambler's green visor hat on his head, a lit cigar in his mouth and a light blue vest over his gaseous body that just screamed, "I'm a fat bum living seaside in an old shack. And, oh yeah, I'm a pervert too, by the way. So I'm guessing the progress is slow going?" Ash asked as he and the others walked up, getting Ghastly's attention as he turned inside. Unfortunately, the trick to changing a living being's physical appearance tangibly is far harder than simply creating a fake illusion of something. I believe I may be getting closer, but this is harder than I previously anticipated, I will admit. His eyes then glowed blue as Pikachu and the others all returned to normal, leading Ash to look back up at his talking ghost type again. So I'm guessing there won't be any visiting to the game lounge for us tonight, right? Ghastly nodded. My apologies, but yes, it would indeed appear so. Give me another day or so and I should be able to do it. Ash smiled at him and then walked over to his other Pokémon. Hey guys, I really appreciate what you're doing for Ghastly and for us by extension. I know this isn't fun but I really do appreciate it. Looking at Pikachu, he continued. We're getting ready to go to dinner now, you okay staying here with the others buddy? Pikachu sent a small glare in Ghastly's direction but nodded nonetheless as he looked back at his trainer. Pikachu. Awesome, thanks again you guys. Ash thanked as he looked back at his friends. Come on guys, let's head out so we're not late. With those words spoken, the four humans left the gym and as soon as they were gone, Ghastly looked over his test subjects and grinned while his eyes glowed blue. Now, where were we? All they could do was sweat nervously and silently pray. Hi you guys. Erica greeted cheerily as she saw Ash and his friends slowly approaching her through the crowds that had gathered outside the Golden Magikarp to dine for the evening. Once they finally made it to the pretty gym leader, though only after wading through a human ocean which was the nightlife of Celadon City, Ash greeted her with a friendly smile. Hey Erica, ladies, you all look beautiful tonight. Erica wasn't by herself in fact, all of the ladies that worked for her were also in attendance behind and beside their friend and boss. And indeed, Ash's words were true. Each and every one of the Saladonia boutique ladies looked absolutely stunning dressed to the nines as they were. Each of them dressed in a variety of different colored dresses with their hair done up uniquely. Erica especially looked beautiful. Her hair was done up into a high bun of some unique design with chopsticks stuck through the top and she was wearing a shimmering, dark blue kimono of an even more beautiful design than the one she had been wearing when she had met Ash and his friends for the first time. Well you guys look pretty sharp too. Delilah complimented with a wink before looking to Giselle and Misty. Oh and you both look stunning. Orchida clasped her hands together and stepped up to get a closer look. Ooh I love your dress Giselle, it looks so pretty. Amari chimed in then as she looked at Misty. And look at your hair Misty, it's beautiful. Erica giggled. Yes you all look positively fabulous and thank you for the compliment Ash, she thanked the young man before tilting her head to him. Did any of you have any trouble getting here? Are you kidding? Misty answered with a smile as she thumbed at Brock. I think he's memorized practically every route in the city to this place. Erica nodded. Wonderful. Then what say we head inside and locate our table? I reserved us a seat on the very top floor. At that, Brock almost freaked out. Ah. Are you serious Erica? The top floor. Giselle blinked at her older friend. Brock it's only a floor. However, she was quickly cut off by the squinty-eyed teen turning and practically yelling at her. Are you crazy Giselle? The top floor of the Golden Magikarp is one of the most exclusive and executive areas of any eating establishment in all of Kanto. It's in a whole other league of its own from not just the lower floors but also every other rooftop restaurant in the whole region. By the time he was done, everyone was staring in mild surprise at Brock's almost manic vigor but Ash broke the spell by looking at the ladies and smiling as he sweat dropped. Sorry but, Brock's a little overeager. He's a big fan of this place since he's a chef himself and also because his mom once worked here. Oh really? Erica questioned before a small smile crossed her lips. Well I'm glad I made the decision I did then. Come on, let's head inside. The four traveling trainers then followed Erica and her staff up to the massive, lavish building, taking the many steps up to the entryway where there were 3 different sets of revolving doors which led inside. As soon as their party passed through the center door and stepped into the elitist high-class restaurant, 3 of the younger patrons' jaws almost dropped to the floor in shock. Giselle being the only one exempted since she had already visited in the past. Ash, Brock and Misty could only gape at the ground floor of the Golden Magikarp. The first and last being due to just plain awe and the middle being entirely out of disbelief that he was now standing inside of the very place he had dreamed about visiting since before some of his younger brothers and sisters had even been born. The main level of the Golden Magikarp was laid out in a wide square shape that had tables and chairs set up in uniquely shaped patterns all across the floor space. The flooring was made up of a mix of fine marble tile. The ceilings and walls were of the most expensive gold and cream-colored wooden design, and massive windows jotted out at perfectly spaced intervals all throughout the room so patrons could stare up into the sky outside as they ate their meals. Several crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, and placed all throughout the ground floor were statues of varying forms of art, some of people and some of Pokémon. A few of the statues, and even paintings that hung on the walls, seemed to resemble some type of abstract art that only the finest of artistic, aristocratic eyes would appreciate. At the far left end of the massive dining room there was a fully stocked bar. Nearest to the entrance where the waiting areas rested there were two breathtaking indoor fountains, which came complete with benches circling the circumference of each one. And right in front of the entrance doors, where the Matre D podium was located, there was a large fish tank aquarium towering behind it. A lavish palace of a tank which, it should be mentioned, housed nearly every water-type Pokémon of a reasonable size in Kanto. Such as Golden, Seeking, Tentacool, Horsey and Shelder, to name but a few. What was even more amazing though was the large, column-like, glass, see-through elevator that stood rooted like a giant tree right in the center of the dining room. The elevator in which, most likely, ferried servers and patrons up and down amongst all 5 levels of the luxurious restaurant. After taking in the sight of the high-class establishment they had stepped into, Erica led them up to the podium where the Matre D had just finished showing an elderly wealthy couple to one of his assistant hosts so they could be taken to their seats. Upon seeing who was approaching them, the finely dressed, black-haired man with a small pencil mustache gave a small head bow and then smiled courteously at Erica. "Ah, Lady Erica. So good to see you again," he greeted in a tone of voice that was as refined and perfectly tailored to the post he manned as was his suit. "Francois, so very nice to see you again as well," Erica greeted politely and with a small nod. "I'm here for the reservations I made yesterday." She gestured at those with her. "These are also members of my party." The well-dressed man looked over the reservation book in front of him before smiling and looking back up at her again. "Yes, I see it here." Clapping his hands, a host assistant came to his side whom he gestured at. "Jeffrey will show you to your table. Thank you, and may your visit at the Golden Magikarp be as exemplary as always." After that the assistant gave a small bow of the head before respectfully requesting they follow him. Leading the large party on, he took them down one of the 2 staircases that went into the dining room itself from the entrance and guided them through the ground floor and towards the elevator. After arriving at it and pressing the button to open the doors, the thick glass gateway parted and allowed them entry into it, the size being just big enough to accommodate the several members that made up Erica's party of guests. Looking to the other restaurant employee who manned the elevator controls, Jeffrey instructed as soon as everyone had filed in. "Rooftop, please, Thompson." Nodding, the gold vest and black dress pants wearing employee pushed the selected button, which was followed by the doors closing and the elevator smoothly beginning its ascent upwards. As the elevator took to the ceiling and began raising above the ground level far below, Ash and his friends stared out through the glass, see-through walls with smiles of amazement on their faces. An amazement that was further solidified once the elevator passed through the ceiling and entered the 2nd floor of the restaurant. Even though the elevator didn't stop, they got to see what the next floor looked like, and while it was essentially an exact model of the ground floor below, save for a few aesthetic and decor deviations, what really caught their eyes was the gigantic theater-sized screen way back against the far wall. As the elevator continued on towards the next floor, Ash and his friends stared in awe at the huge movie screen which, from what the palette trainer could see, was currently entertaining the dining patrons with a popular movie that had just been released the previous year. Recalling that he had seen the movie with his mom, Ash believed the film was something called Lord of the Pokeballs. A movie which was just one of a rumored trilogy and centered around a medieval Kanto and multiple factions of humans, Pokémon, short hairy men and long-eared people. They were basically just fighting some Dark Lord and his army over the fate of an evil, all-powerful Pokeball which belonged to said Dark Lord, possessed his supposed malice inside of it and controlled the will to dominate all life on Earth, or so it went. As the elevator ascended to the next floor, thus cutting off the view of the critically acclaimed film. They were greeted to the sight of yet another immense dining area making up the third floor. Although, unlike on the second one which had a built-in theater, the current floor they were passing through possessed a large stage in which, at the present moment, looked like it had some kind of pokey ventriloquist performing live on stage. None of them could see clearly, but the man who was obviously doing a marvelous job of entertaining the dining crowd looked to be one of the more famous pokey ventriloquists in the region, a comedian named Jeff Durtham. Once again, Ash had seen the man's performances on TV with his mother and they had both agreed, he was rather talented at his art and indeed could elicit a laugh or two. As the elevator continued on to the next floor above, the radio that was built into it started playing a song which had Misty and Giselle almost instantly swooning and even caused Ash to start tapping his thighs to the rhythm. Seeing the two girls, plus the younger of the two males, enjoying the beat of the recently released rock poppy tune, Erica giggled and voiced her amusement. "I take it you like this song then?" Almost immediately, Giselle turned and gushed. "Are you kidding? The Claydoll Dolls are the best band around right now and this song Slide has got to be best one." "Oh come on," Misty voiced in disbelief as she turned to look at the slightly older girl. "Everyone knows their song Iris is the best." "You're both wrong." Ash spoke up smugly as he crossed his arms. "The best one hands down is that song they wrote called Broadway." "No one asked you." They both yelled at the same time that Ash suddenly found himself laying on the floor of the elevator with a knot raising up on the back of his head, leaving two sweat-dropping restaurant employees to stare at them while Erica and her girls just giggled at their antics. "Hey! Look there!" Brock suddenly exclaimed as they finally came to the fourth floor. "Those chefs are preparing food right in front of the guests." Turning their attention from the now twitching, prone Ash, Giselle and Misty looked along with the other girls to where the older teen was pointing and saw several open grills scattered all throughout the dining room. The grills themselves were squarish in shape and were all placed in the midst of a wrap-around bar which patrons could sit and dine at while, just on the other side, a chef masterfully prepared their food right in front of them. Not only that, but each chef also worked with a partner Pokémon who helped them cook and, while preparing the meals, each of them would perform astounding tricks which had the guests at each grill intently enthralled by the unique culinary show. "Wow, that's cool," Ash commented in awe as he stood up again and scanned his eyes over all the chefs performing at the many different grills scattered throughout the large room. "Is that what your mom did, Brock?" Giselle asked as she looked over at her spiky-haired friend. He shook his head. "No. My mother actually worked in the kitchens here in the restaurant as head chef for a time. She always liked seeing what these guys did, but she never took the training needed to do it. Didn't have a Pokémon either." As the elevator finally passed through the fourth floor and disappeared into the ceiling again, it soon came out on the very top of the roof of the restaurant. Slowing to a gradual halt, the top digital bar above the doors dinged to a green color and allowed said doors to slide open. As soon as they did, the assistant host stepped out first and gestured for the others to follow after him with a polite, "Please watch your step." Exiting the elevator with everyone else in tow, Ash and his friends looked around the rooftop dining area of the Golden Magikarp and, once again, found themselves at a loss for words. The fifth floor of the 5-star restaurant had tables set up all throughout the rooftop along with a small bar on one end, potted plants of an exotic-looking nature placed tastefully here and there, lit tiki-like torches dotted near many of the tables, and there was even a fountain near the bar which appeared to resemble a subtropical jungle theme, complete with a small waterfall. Looking near the end of the rooftop, the four traveling friends even saw a small stage built to a level high enough for everyone to see no matter where you were sitting. If that wasn't enough though, the rooftop even had a bathroom far off to the left-hand side of the actual dining area. While Ash and his friends stared in awe at the amazing scenery around them, their host guide led all of them up to a podium where yet another man dressed in an expensive-looking tuxedo was waiting. "These guests have a table reserved, Jonathan, party of a miss." The host assistant looked back at Erica and the others, leading the brunette to answer his unspoken question. "Erica, sir. The name would be under Erica." The rooftop host nodded and then looked over the guest list on the podium in front of him before looking back at his fellow host assistant and smiling. Yes, of course, I see the table reserved right here. Thank you, Jeffrey, I will accommodate them from here. The man who had taken them to the rooftop turned and bowed to Ash and the others before taking his leave while the other host smiled kindly. Please follow me to your table. While all of them started following their new host through the rooftop dining area, Ash leaned over and whispered to Misty. Man, talk about some major pomp and glam up here. She looked at him with slightly widened eyes in total agreement and then whispered back an, I know. Before they eventually arrived at the large table which had been reserved especially for them. Once everyone was seated around the table with Ash in between Giselle and Misty, the rooftop exclusive host gave a small bow and then said respectfully. Your server will be with you shortly, please enjoy your meal ladies and gentlemen. Once he had walked off, Erica settled herself into her seat a little more before looking over at Ash, Misty, Giselle and Brock. So, what do you all think so far? Visually, does it live up to the expectations you've had? This place is amazing. Ash responded first in a tone of awe. I mean, everything is so expensive and high-class looking. Even the plants look imported and like they cost more than all the money in my bank account. Yeah, I'm almost afraid to move too much on this chair for fear I might damage it and then have to wash dishes for a year just to pay for it, Misty joked with a good-natured smile on her face. Erica giggled and looked at the orange-haired girl. Well, Misty, don't be too nervous. After all, the decor may be nice, but the food is what's really to die for. Brock shook his head and spoke up in a tone of disbelief. To be totally honest, I never thought that I would get to come here and visit this place, and now that I'm here it really is better than I ever imagined it would be. Thank you, Erica, for giving us this opportunity. The other three nodded in vigorous agreement while Ash picked up the torch, so to speak. Yeah, Erica, really, this was so nice of you to invite us here like this. I mean, this is the nicest restaurant in all of Kanto, so I know it can't be cheap. Oh, think nothing of it. The sweet young gym leader and shop owner answered with a waved hand. We all see you as friends after what you did for us, and after talking about it, the other girls and I simply wanted to do something special for the four of you before you left. The other girls with Erica all nodded in unison before Tulia spoke up. Not only that, but business has been booming ever since the fire at the gym, so this is also a celebrating. Yeah, because without all of you our business would probably be belly up right now, Garania agreed as she smiled. So it's the least we could do. Erica isn't just saying that about the food either, it really is the best. Giselle said to her friends as she sat back in her chair and smoothed her dress out. You've been here before? Pansy asked interestedly as she looked at Giselle. The brunette nodded. Yes, I have actually. My family is rather affluent, so we came here a time or two before. Although we never ate up here, usually it was on one of the lower floors. Speaking of which, Brock began as he looked towards Erica. If you don't mind me asking, Erica, how did you manage to get us a seat up here on the rooftop dining area? From everything I read and was told from my mother about this place, where we are now is usually only reserved for the utmost wealthy and famous. Yeah, come to think about it. Misty started thoughtfully. That host downstairs seemed to know you, Erica. The pretty young gym leader smiled before replying to their inquiries. Well, to be honest, I know the owner of the restaurant. His wife loves our products and refuses to buy her feminine products anywhere else. Because of their loyal and very generous business, we've always given them special deals on a wide range of our products. She looked over at her girls then. Some time back he came to us wanting a special gift for his wife's birthday and requested if we could craft a special perfume just for her. Erica looked back at Misty and the others again. He told us what scents she liked the most, and after experimenting for a time, we managed to craft a special formula just for his wife, which she ended up loving. Erica smiled again. Ever since then her husband told us that any time we ever wish to make reservations here all we have to do is call and ask. Amari gave a small laugh at her boss's words. It's basically what you could call a mutually beneficial business relationship. Misty raised her eyebrows in no small matter of amazement and murmured as she shook her head, I'll say. Shortly after that their waiter came along and took their orders, to which Ash, Brock and Misty nearly had mini heart attacks upon seeing the prices of the items on the fancy embroidered menus that had been laid out on the table long before they were seated, but right after he left, Ash suddenly squinted his eyes as if trying to see something. Catching sight of his unusual behavior and becoming concerned, Giselle looked over at him and asked softly, "Ash, what is it?" To which he just continued squinting his eyes while placing a hand over his forehead. No. No, there's no way. No way that can be him. Who? Misty asked curiously, having overheard and now looking in the same direction Ash was. I don't see anybody special. However, a few moments later the boy's eyes widened as his mouth dropped open. Holy heliolisk, it really is him. Everyone went to turn around at his words, but it proved to be of no consequence since, within the span of a second or two, none other than Lance Blackthorne himself, Dragon Master and Interregional Pokémon League champion of both Kanto and Johto, came walking their way while following behind the same host whom had seated them earlier. As soon as the red-haired man, whom was dressed in his usual famous black ensemble and flowing cape, spotted their table though, the champion deviated off course with his host in the most nonchalant manner possible and started towards them. Seeing this, Misty's eyes widened in utter disbelief. Is that? No way. No, it can't be. Ever the one to state what no one else could though, Brock stammered like he was shell-shocked. That's Lance. The champion of the Pokémon League. Why is he coming this way? Giselle whispered anxiously in an equal tone of shock. Is he actually coming up to us? Ash. Misty elbowed her friend and then shook his arm. Do you see this? Do you see it? It's Lance, it's actually Lance the champion himself. Never mind that Ash had been the one to spot him first because, at the moment, the young trainer couldn't even get a reply out of his mouth. So was his surprise as he just watched the most powerful trainer in the whole region approach their table confidently and yet also while exuding a totally relaxed manner. Erica. Long time no see, huh? The reddish-pink-haired champion greeted as he finally arrived at the table. Ash and his friends' mouths practically dropped open upon hearing the Kanto Pokémon champion greet Erica in such an informal fashion, but they were even more so surprised when she simply smiled back at him and replied, "Why hello Lance, I'm a little surprised to see you here." Even Erica's girls didn't seem overly shocked that Lance was talking to their boss, a fact which only further cemented the amazement of the four younger trainers present at the table. At Erica's reply, Lance merely laughed and put a hand on his side. Yeah, well, what can I say? Everyone's gotta get off the road and return to some form of civilization every once in a while. Though to be honest, I'm just here for a sponsorship dinner concerning all the different firms that'll be sponsoring the Indigo Conference next year. Putting a hand on his head, the champion chuckled in a very unchampion-like manner as he finished sheepishly. Tell you the truth, I'd rather sit and dine with a horde of hungry Raiden than do this, but, unfortunately. He sighed despondently and dropped his head. It's part of the job. Mr. Goodwin likes to start these talks early. Erica merely smiled in amusement and shook her head. You always did hate performing the actual aspects of your job as a champion, didn't you? Even back when I met you that year during the Gym Leaders Conference in Indigo City, which you spoke at. Lance chuckled in slight embarrassment and shook his head. Yeah, well, what can I say? I'm more of a field man than anything else. Oh, and by the way. His face then became concerned as he looked at the young woman and her employees seriously. I heard about the fire at your gym and the break-in at your shop. Are you girls okay? Oh yes, we're all fine. Erica waved off his concern with a reassuring smile. We had a little misfortune at the shop and the gym due to an angry ex of mine, but we're fine and so are the Pokémon. In fact, repairs are underway at the gym as we speak and the shop is livelier than ever. She then tilted her head towards Ash and the others. In fact, if it wasn't for these four young trainers here, we probably wouldn't be doing nearly as well as we are now. They really are quite the heroes. They caught the man who vandalized our shop and then risked their lives to save the Pokémon at our gym. They even put out the fire themselves when that same criminal ex-boyfriend of mine returned to burn it down and steal our stores of most valuable scents. Lance finally looked towards Ash and his friends and then smiled himself. Really now? They did all that, did they? Well, that's just wonderful. I love hearing about courageous young trainers who stand up against a challenge and do everything in their power with their Pokémon to help themselves or someone else. What are your names, if you don't mind me asking, young trainers? All four of them seemed like their mouths had suddenly been zipped shut when Lance spoke to them, but, apparently used to it by now, he merely smiled again in amusement and put his hands on his hips. Ah, come on. None of that now. Forget about who I am. We aren't in a battle stadium, so right now I'm just another normal trainer like you kids who loves Pokémon. He then winked. And a good story too. So come on, don't be shy. Finally, Brock spoke up first and did so in as steady of a voice as possible. My name is Brock, sir. I mean Champion Lance, sir. I was the former gym leader of the Pewter City Pokémon Gym. Lance still seemed amused at Brock's slightly sweating face but was determined to put him at ease as he replied interestedly, really? Former leader of one of the main 8, huh? So what do you do now? Brock shook his head and then continued enthusiastically. My goal is to become the world's best Pokémon breeder. A breeder? Lance blinked in surprise before grinning. Well, hey, that's great. You know, a lot of people think that only raising Pokémon to be powerful as a Pokémon trainer is all that matters, but learning how to raise them from egg up with tender, loving care as a breeder is just as important too. That's a great goal, Brock. The squinty-eyed teen still appeared a little nervous as he simply nodded tensely and then replied back almost forcefully. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Chuckling again, Lance then looked to Misty. And what about you, young lady? What's your name? Misty, for her part, seemed more composed as she responded back smoothly. My name is Misty, sir, and I was the former head gym leader of Cerulean City before I left to pursue my dream of becoming a great water-type master like Lorelei of the Elite Four. Lance laughed at that. Lorelei Well, if you were the former gym leader of Cerulean City, then I guarantee you must be well on your way. It's a good gym. He then asked the same question of Giselle, whom replied more shyly after giving her name. Well, I was going to Pokémon Technical School where I was head of my class for the years I went. Although, once I met my friends here, I decided there was more to learn about being a trainer outside of the classroom than in. You know what? Lance said as he shook a finger at her. You are absolutely right about that. School is great, don't get me wrong, and those technical schools can really teach you a lot about the theoretics behind being a good trainer, but only actual field work, getting boots on the ground and traveling with your very own Pokémon can teach you what it really means to have the heart of a trainer. Once he looked to Ash, the black-haired boy simply looked at the champion for several moments before eventually smiling and then speaking in a strong, confident tone. My name is Ash Ketchum. And my goal is to be the world's greatest Pokémon trainer by getting as close to my Pokémon as I possibly can. Lance looked surprised upon hearing Ash's name, though perhaps it was for more than one reason, and then asked, Did you say Ash Ketchum? At the boy's nod, the champion smiled and crossed his arms. So you're the trainer Agatha told me about. What do you know? Coincidences are mysterious indeed. Ash looked more than a little surprised that Lance knew who he was, and he voiced that confusion. You know me. Of course I do. Lance proclaimed as he smirked. Agatha couldn't stop talking about you when we talked at one of our league functions in Indigo City on the plateau about a week or two ago. She told me all about how you and your friends handled that haunter in Lavender Town and about how much promise you showed when she worked with you a little bit before you parted ways. Oh, really? Well, Ash put a hand behind his head and chuckled nervously. That's really nice of her to speak so kindly of me. Agatha is a really nice person and I liked her. Well, I'll be looking forward to seeing you compete in the Indigo Conference next year, Ash, Lance said with a smile. If you're really as good as she says, then I'm anxious to see your future battles. Misty raised her hand at that moment while Ash simply nodded with a determined look in his eyes in response to what Lance told him. How do you know Erica so well, Lance? The champion turned to her and chuckled. Well, we met at a gym leaders conference I was invited to guest speak at in Indigo City. Erica picked up from there. Yes, he was actually going around talking to some of us after the conference was over and the two of us simply hit it off. We've been friends ever since. Lance chuckled. Yes, well, at the time I was dating a girl that had a love of perfume and Erica helped me out in a pinch one anniversary with a scent my then girlfriend enjoyed and that Erica's shop just so happened to make. Boy, she really pulled my hind end out of the fire with that one. Erica and the Seldonia boutique girls all shared a small laugh at that particular memory before Lance suddenly looked a few tables over and then gave a small sigh. Well, I'd love to stay, but I need to be present for this boring dinner, so, with that said, he then gave a small bow. Everyone, have a great evening. He then looked at Erica and the other ladies. Erica, ladies, great seeing you again and take care. The Kanto champion glanced at Ash and his friends afterwards. Ash, Misty, Brock, Giselle, it was truly a pleasure meeting you all. I wish you the best on your travels and individual endeavors, and Ash, I look forward to seeing you competing soon. They all said goodbye to Lance after that and watched him off before Misty looked forward and shook her head in disbelief. I can't believe we just met the Kanto and Johto region Pokémon champion. Yeah, no kidding, Ash agreed as he looked at her. This place really is a celebrity magnet if we met someone like him the first time here. Giselle and Brock both nodded their agreement before Erica raised her glass and smiled. Everyone, I propose a toast. To our new friends who without, we would have been in very real trouble many times over. I know they have to leave soon to head out on their journey again, and I think I speak for all of us when I say that we wish them the absolute best of luck and will be rooting for them every step of the way. Delilah, Krissa, Orchida, Amari, Pansy, Rose, Tulia and Garania all nodded and smiled in agreement before raising their glasses as well. This of course caused Ash and his friends to share a smile between each other before raising their own glasses and announcing at the same time, cheers. For the rest of the evening the large group of friends continued to talk, share stories and have a few laughs over the delectable meals that were eventually served to them. It was somewhat bittersweet that they would soon be parting, but if that indeed was the case, none of them could think of a better way to end their time together than the night they were currently enjoying. The following day saw Ash, Misty, Brock and Giselle preparing for something far more nerve-wracking and serious than their previous night of frivolity and fun. Currently, they were all congregated in Ash and Brock's room in the Pokémon Center with Ghastly serving as the fixture piece of the meeting. They were all standing in front of the ghost type with expressions of slight anxiousness adorned upon their faces as Ash addressed his Pokémon. So is this going to hurt, or exactly what do you plan to do? The usually comedic Pokémon turned to the young trainer and answered him in a tone that was rarely serious for his usual jovial personality. It shouldn't hurt, no, but as for how this is going to work, I spent all night trying to find a way to place a lasting illusion around the Pokémon I had to work with. Pikachu shook his head and shivered from the memories on Ash's bed while Ghastly continued. I believe I finally found a way to do it, but in order for the illusions to remain, I myself will have to be in close proximity to all of you so that it doesn't break. But how will that be possible? Misty asked in confusion. Once we decide to actually infiltrate Team Rocket's underground base, I guarantee we'll probably end up separating or splitting up at some point. It's happened before when crazy things happened to us, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happened again. Ghastly nodded. Duly noted, my dear, duly noted. Which is why I devised a method to use in which I will still be able to be with all of you, regardless on whether you stay together or not. How? Giselle questioned with a head tilt. I know you're powerful, Ghastly, but even you can't be in more than one place at a time. The ghost, psychic type hybrid grinned. Ah, you see, that is where you would be wrong, young Miss Giselle. His eyes then glowed as three wristwatches, one blue, one red and one pink, suddenly poofed and hovered into being in front of Giselle, Brock and Misty. As they stared at the three time-telling devices, he explained. You see, I imbued some of my power into the form of these three wristwatches. When you put them on, you will immediately be turned into the illusionary forms that I created for you. Rather I am near you or not, your false identities will not fail you as long as you wear those watches. Ash looked at his friends and then at Ghastly. Well, what about me? Do I have one too? Ghastly's grinning face turned on his trainer as he chuckled mirthfully. Why, of course. As my trainer, you get the great privilege of wearing me yourself. The ghost Pokémon then disappeared in another poof of smoke, and when it cleared, he was now floating as a small black wristwatch that had the image of a grinning Ghastly as the background for the clock piece of the watch itself. Now, his voice sounded out of the watch. Each of you attach your watches and prepare to be astounded and amazed. The four of them reached up and grabbed their respective watches before attaching them to their wrists and waiting. Almost immediately they all felt a strange sensation, like pulsing energy waves, rolling off their bodies, which lasted for a few lingering seconds. As soon as the feelings passed, Giselle looked down at herself and examined her hands. I don't feel any differently than I did before. She then turned to look over at Misty and all but fell back in shock as she jumped and pointed. Wow. Misty, you look completely different. I do. The former gym leader questioned with a blink before going over to the mirror near Brock's bed and looking at herself in it. As soon as she did, Misty's eyes went wide and her mouth dropped open. Holy Arceus. I do look different. And indeed she did. Misty now appeared to be around 17 or 18 and about 3 to 4 inches taller. But what was even more unusual though was the fact that in appearance, she didn't look anything like herself. Her hair was now brown and hung down all the way to her butt, with 2 strands of hair coming down over either side of her forehead, as well as 2 more hanging all the way past her face. She also now had golden yellow eyes and a beautifully sculpted face with soft angles to her cheeks and chin. Her outfit consisted of a white shirt with the number 04 printed across the chest that hung down off her shoulders and exposed a smooth, taut belly. Her waist was adorned with a long, flowing red skirt with a white leaf design imprinted on the side that looked very similar to what someone would wear on a beach. Her feet were covered by white, low heels, and on her head rested a big white sun hat which was styled with a red Pokeball emblem. As Misty observed her new appearance in the mirror with awe, Giselle came up to stand beside of her and felt her own mouth hang open. The former Pokémon Tech student now looked to be around the same adult age as Misty, but, much like her currently shell-shocked friend, her appearance was also entirely different from what it was. Giselle's hair was now a lighter shade of brown than it once was, and unlike her real, free-flowing style with small curls at the end, her new one had all of her hair pulled up into a high ponytail on the top of her head where it hung down in waves to her upper back. She also had 2 curly ringlets of hair falling down past her cheeks to her collarbone. Also different from her original dark, chocolate brown color was that her eyes were now bright blue and her figure was both tall, as well as respectively curvaceous. As for her own outfit, it mainly consisted of jean shorts with the pockets ripped out and pulled down past the main material, a thin white top that exposed her midriff, and a black vest which accentuated the white shirt perfectly. She wore black shoes with red laces and sole lining on her feet, though the shoes themselves looked far more like boots than anything else. To top it all off, she also, like Misty, had a hat on her head. This one being a white cap that her ponytail came through with a light red, almost pink brim and an identical colored Pokeball symbol printed on the front. While the 2 girls studied their new appearances in the mirror, Ash turned to look at Brock and became astounded at how different his only male friend in the group now looked. For starters, his eyes were actually visible now with his new appearance, and the color was somewhere between amber and light brown. His hair, while still spiky, was a bit longer and stuck out in all directions, though especially over his forehead. The color of it resembled something of a honey brown, almost dark yellow. His new clothes were far simpler than the girls' was, coming down basically to a plain button-up, black sleeveless shirt, green shorts and white and green tennis shoes. When Ash finally worked up the courage, he walked into the bathroom and looked into the large mirror behind the sink, now ready to take in his own appearance. In many ways, seeing yourself not only as an adult but as someone else entirely was surreal in a strange sense. And for Ash, that statement could not have been any more true. Tall, trim and rather handsome, his cheeks now lacked the signature Z marks they had always sported, and his eyes, though still brown, were a lighter shade of brown. His hair, even though mostly now covered with a red cap that had a white Pokeball on the front, appeared to be a light shade of brown, and his outfit appeared to be just as simple as that of Brock's. His fit torso was concealed by a white t-shirt with red sleeves, collar and some kind of weird blocky symbol on the chest. Nicely fitting light blue jeans covered his lower half, and his shoes looked a lot like Brock's, only red and white. After examining his reflection for several long moments, Ash finally walked out of the bathroom and looked at his friends, his voice coming out in a deeper, unrecognizable pitch seconds later. This is kind of weird. Brock looked at his hands and then down at his clothes. No kidding, Ghastly did one heck of a job making us look different from our real selves. I love my outfit. Giselle gushed as she turned back and forth to see herself better in the mirror. It's so cute. She wasn't alone though, since Misty joined in her gushing while admiring herself in the mirror too. Oh, I know. I love this skirt and the hat. So I trust you like the changes. Ghastly's voice spoke up out of the watch on Ash's left wrist. Are you kidding? Ash asked in disbelief. You did incredible, Ghastly. Where did you even come up with these appearances? He could almost hear the smug satisfaction and see the wide grin on his Pokemon's face as the ghost type replied back. From my genius mind. All it took was a few hours playing around with Pikachu and the others, a dash of creativity here, a smidgen of brilliance there, a small pinch of my unique artistic vision to top it all off, and voila. 4 brand new appearances produced straight off the line of Ghastly's design incorporated. He then chuckled and announced grandly, I even thought up identities for your new faces while I was at it. Really? Giselle asked interestedly. What are they? Ghastly laughed boisterously again before raising Ash's hand up against his will, the one wearing the watch, and pointing at each of them in turn. Going from Misty, Giselle, Brock, and then making Ash point at himself, each one in that exact order. Your names when in these forms shall be Leaf, Hilda, Blue and Red. Silence reigned for a few moments after Ghastly's proclamation, only being broken by Ash making a humming sound in his throat, his face twisted in confusion. Can I ask why we have to be called names like that? Ghastly merely hummed pleasantly for a few seconds before responding in a cheerful voice, Nope. Just take it as me having creating liberty with the names of your characters as the artist responsible for such masterpieces. Ash and his friends shared a look amongst each other, and sweat dropped afterwards at the ghost type's poor choice of names, but none of them decided it was something worth wasting time arguing on, so they simply dropped the matter. Well, Ghastly, Ash began as he looked down at the watch on his wrist. You really did outdo yourself with these illusionary disguises, seriously, great work. Yeah, I don't even think my own sisters would be able to guess who I really was. Misty agreed with a smile as she looked herself in the mirror again. Brock stepped up then and looked over at Ash. The disguises may be great, Ash, but we still have a problem. He gestured towards Pikachu on the bed, who was now staring at each of them with an ear tilted to the side as he tried to process their transformations. Pikachu is far too easily recognizable when he's with you. Even with these disguises, not many people go around walking with a Pikachu on their shoulder, and even though you don't look like you, it could be enough to potentially arouse suspicion on you. Ash looked over at his first Pokémon and narrowed his eyes thoughtfully. Yeah, you're right, Brock. Man, I didn't think about that. Giselle stepped forward. But what do we do about it? We can't leave Pikachu here when we do it, because what happens if after we cause troubles for Team Rocket we have to hurry and get out of the city? Ash nodded in agreement and simply looked down at Pikachu for quite some time without saying anything until, finally, he knelt down until he was eye level with his first partner and sighed. They're right, Pi. You really are too recognizable, and Team Rocket would probably get suspicious as soon as they saw you, especially if they've seen us before together. Like Jesse, James or Meowth. And if they saw you and alerted their fellow Rocket teammates, we'd be in a world of trouble. He sighed again and shook his head. The only way out of this I see is by either sending you to Professor Oak's until we're done, or... He paused for a few moments before continuing hesitantly. Even though I know you don't like it, put you into your Pokeball. Seeing Pikachu look at him with surprise on his face, Ash tried to ease the situation. Look buddy, I won't make you do anything you don't want to do. This is your choice and your choice only. I'm not going to make it for you. The yellow electric type looked down at the floor in deep thought and didn't make even a peep for what felt like forever. As he did, none of them said so much as a word, merely respecting and giving Pikachu time to think over his options before he made a final decision. Eventually, he did look back up, and when he did, Pikachu started to make several animated gestures while speaking quickly. Pika. Pika Pika. Pika Pika Pikachu Pie. Pika. Pikachu Pikachu. Pika Pie Pikachu. He finished by making a circular gesture with his arms, followed by tapping the invisible circle in the air with his nose. Ash followed all of this closely and, believing he understood the meaning of it, tried to put the pieces together. So, are you saying that we've never been apart all the way up until now and you don't intend to start here? Receiving a nod in the affirmative from Pikachu, he kept going. You say that you would rather go into your Pokeball than be separated from me. Pikachu gave another fierce nod, his little eyes burning with intensity and his face set into a visage of stony surety. Seeing his Pokemon's utter and complete passionate conviction to stay with him no matter the cause, Ash felt tears sting his eyes. Pikachu I. He stopped and rubbed the wetness away from his eyes for a moment before smiling softly at his first Pokemon. You're a one-of-a-kind awesome pal Pikachu, you know that. Ash then stood up and nodded. Okay, if you're sure about this Pikachu, then I'll put you in your Pokeball while we break into Team Rocket's underground base, and as soon as all of this is over, I'll let you straight out. Wait a minute Ash, Misty spoke up as she held a hand out to him. We should probably take Pikachu and all of our stuff with us as soon as we leave here. I know we agreed to just scope the game lounge out today, but the longer we stay in this city and look like our normal selves when we're not using these illusions, the more of a chance someone from Team Rocket might recognize us. Brock nodded and crossed his arms. I agree. It would be ideal to get a feel for the game lounge before we do anything, but Misty is right. Team Rocket have a base set up in this city, so there could be undercover agents crawling everywhere for all we know. It's a miracle we haven't been seen yet if that really is the case. Yeah, and don't forget that most likely, we're all still dead to them. Giselle reminded. After that business on the Saint. And when it sunk, the rocket admins we dealt with probably spread the word that the kids who stopped them went down with the ship. Ash himself nodded and sat down next to Pikachu on the bed. Yeah, you're right. These illusion disguises will work so well because Team Rocket doesn't think we're around to mess with them anymore. I imagine anytime someone interferes with their plans, they probably remember exactly who it was. He put a hand to his chin. The only reason we or our families haven't dealt with any blowback from them after we stopped their plans at Mt. Moon and on the Saint. Anne was because they probably assumed we died when the ship went down, like Giselle said. And what we did at Pokémon Land never saw us actually encountering any rockets while we were there, Brock added in. Any machine can go faulty, and the giant Pokémon mechas they had there were technically the ones that actually destroyed the park. Our prints were nowhere to be found on any of it. Ash nodded at his friend. Yeah. So as of right now we have the best element of surprise to use our disguises, since the four of us have pretty much vanished off of Team Rocket's radar. But the longer we stay here in Celadon and look like ourselves walking around, the more of a chance one of them has of seeing us. And if that happens and we break into their base, Misty begins. It'll probably look suspicious. Although if we just do this now and use these disguises, then it won't matter if we draw Team Rocket's wrath and they try to find us. All they'll be looking for are 4 fake trainers who don't even exist. But what about Jesse, James and Meowth? Giselle spoke up again. We've encountered them several times since the incident on the Saint. And, what if they've told their organization we're still alive? Ash laughed at that. Giselle, those 3 are just a couple of clowns. I have a feeling the other, actually dangerous members of Team Rocket probably never pay them mind of day. They're probably lucky if they even get noticed for anything they do. You know. Brock started slowly. Something has been on my mind lately while talking about all this stuff with Team Rocket. He then looked amongst his 3 currently different looking friends. I know it hasn't happened much, but we don't know what will come down the pipeway in the future. Especially with Ash wanting to take the Indigo Conference tournament next year. He trailed off for a moment before continuing. What if someone, or even the higher-ups of Team Rocket, Seer has already seen us on TV? Like during that mess in Hutber Port with the Tentacruel and Tentacool, which was highly televised. We were in the spotlight for all of that, who's to say no one from Team Rocket saw us alive then? Silence reigned at Brock's glaring point for quite some time before Ash eventually answered with a head shake. Well, honestly, I guess we have no way of knowing if they did or not. We can only hope they didn't and be much more careful about appearing on TV from here on out. Ash then sighed. Look guys, the fact is, none of us is safe when it comes to Team Rocket. They're a highly sophisticated and organized criminal empire with vast reaches throughout this region and beyond. These disguises aren't meant to totally put our real identities out of danger, just mitigate the risks we're taking to some degree. He stood up and walked over to the window to stare out at the city outside the Pokémon Center. Getting involved messing around with them like this is extremely dangerous no matter how we go about it. And we can try to stay off TV when things happen to us, like they always seem to do, but sometimes that just won't be possible. Like when I compete in the Indigo Conference next year, Brock made a perfect point. Turning back to his friends, he held his hands out. This is why I told you guys that you didn't have to do this with me. I may be just a kid, but I know the risks of what I'm getting into here. I don't have a choice in this. Arceus chose me and that's all there is to it. But you guys aren't bound by that. He looked down and frowned. My mom, Aunt Amelia, Gary, Daisy, Professor Oak, my Pokémon back home, all of them are at risk through my actions, I know that. Steps like these disguises just add an extra layer of protection. Helping me with things like this not only puts yourselves in danger but your families too, and you have to realize that. Don't you think we already did before we agreed to this, Ash? Misty asked rhetorically. Of course we did. Or at least I did. I agreed to help you because you're my friend and you have a purpose to live that we can't even guess at. Maybe we were meant to help you, I don't know. All I do know is helping you feels right and is something I have to do, risks be taken as they may. And if I didn't, I just wouldn't feel right inside. I feel the same way, Ash. Giselle nodded in agreement. I believe we were all meant to meet and become friends, and facing dangers like this must just be a part of our destinies together. Brock smiled. I pray every day that Arceus keeps my family safe while we're doing all the things we are to help you, Ash. It's too late and I'm in too deep now to back out. My name is just as far down this hole as yours is. Ash turned around and looked at each of his friends before nodding and then looking at Pikachu. I guess we're leaving to do this now then, Pi. Walking over to his Pokémon, he knelt down and grabbed his bag off the bed before reaching into one of the pockets that he had stored his first Pokémon's ball inside of and pulling it out. After examining the electric lightning bolt symbol on the ball, Ash held it up to Pikachu and spoke. Okay pal, here we go. I swear I'll let you out as soon as this is over. The electric-type Pokémon nodded with a serious look on his face. Pika. He replied firmly, letting his trainer know that he was ready for what was about to happen. Pressing the button on the middle of the ball, Ash watched as a red beam of light came out of the Pokeball and hit Pikachu before retreating and pulling him inside of it. Standing back up and looking down at the ball in his hand, Ash sighed and closed his eyes. Thank you for doing this, Pikachu. I promise I won't waste it. I'll be letting you out again as soon as I can. Turning back to his friends, he gave a confident smile. Alright, let's do this you guys. Wow, this place is incredible. Misty exclaimed in awe as she looked around at the inside of the Celadon Entertainment Lounge and Game Center. That's an understatement, Brock corrected as he too looked around. This place is huge. After passing through the revolving doors outside of the entertainment lounge, one was greeted immediately by the sight of a massive casino right inside the doors. Slot machines, craps and card tables, a large bar and more types of gambling games than one could count on both hands filled the casino like weedle on a tomato plant. Not only that, the sheer volume of people that were inside of the casino made the whole room seem like an eternally buzzing hive of excitable activity that was almost overloading to the senses. Men dressed in fancy tuxedos and women outfitted in some of the most expensive dresses and fine jewelry money could buy were dispersed all throughout the casino. Men and women, younger and older,